Welcome to the Path of Least Expectance podcast. I'm your host, Michaela Batten. I'm so excited to have our guest today. She's a jack of all trades. More like, I don't know, I'd say you're like a queen of all trades. You're not a jack, you're a queen. Jessica Martin, our paths crossed years ago when she was in Wilmington modeling. And honestly, I feel like if I look back at that time, it was like so transformative for both of us. Like thinking back where we were there, and we can get into all that later. But her path took her to Miami, where she's now co-owner of Mood the Agency, a creative digital agency. She's a photographer. She's a host of a podcast herself, the Whiskey and Water Podcast, a No BS podcast about female entrepreneurship and women in business, which we all know that I love. And she's still modeling. I mean, you were in Miami Swim Week this summer. So, I mean, you're just killing it in all aspects. You're a really great example of what can be accomplished when we take control of the reins, but yet trust the process and really just kind of pursue our passions. So, Jessica has so much to share today, and I'm happy to have her on the podcast. So, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I feel like this is such a full circle moment for the both of us, having met so many years ago. And I don't know, it's just so fun to be on this side of the podcast because I'm usually always the one doing like the interviewing. So it's just going to be fun being on this side.
I was thinking about that. I was like, I wonder if at any point she's gonna like stop and like ask me a question. Like,
you know, 100%.
Oh gosh, and this hasn't happened yet. I haven't had another podcaster on yet, which is funny because I have a couple on my list, but you're the first one. So
perfect.
Scary. Right. So, and this is what I was gonna say. So, I met you. I think I owned this women's shoe store at one point, and my husband was opening his coffee shop, which is now thriving. This had to have been, I think it's 6 years ago, because my baby was a baby. My oldest was an infant. And we had this empty space that we were trying to redo into this coffee shop. And it was basically the bones of the place. I mean, just like sawdust and wood everywhere. And I was so inspired. And I look back, I mean, obviously you guys look phenomenal, but I'm like, what was I thinking? It was you and which we can get into later, your co-host and your co-owner, the co-owner of your other business, Olivia, and you guys. I'm like, I want you guys to model for me in this space, and it's like super raw, and it's gonna be great. So you guys did it, and you look phenomenal. And I think back, and I'm like, I'm sure we both thought it was really cool at the time, but like, in that moment. Yeah, loved it. You know, you were like so raw. I feel like you were modeling, but you had not expanded to Miami yet, you had not even really traveled yet out of Wilmington. And then, for me, it's like I was in such a different spot. So yeah. Anyways, full circle moment. This is really, really cool.
Yeah, no, and I love that shoot. I still like. Oh, you know how like iPhone brings up like the memories. Like sometimes it'll like show me pictures from that. And I'm like, oh. We were like so fresh and such babies. And even for Olivia and I, because that was like the first time Olivia went back and like saw my hometown. So like that was such a fun trip for us, and really honestly a pivotal like marking moment for our careers, because we went from like modeling together to now 6 something years later, we own a business together and also have the podcast. So it's crazy seeing kind of like that paper trail of our journeys.
It is. The dots all connect. Okay, so let's start there. Like, so take us back. I always like to tell my guests, take us back as far as you want in your path, as far as you think's appropriate, and kind of start from point A, and then we'll just kind of walk through together and how your journey has kind of taken you to where you are now.
Yeah, so I was originally born in Miami, and my dad is military, which is why I grew up in like the Wilmington area. And I graduated high school in the Wilmington area, and then I moved back down to Miami to do college. So I went to FIU, and it was actually in Wilmington was when I did my first ever shoot. And that was for Hot Wax Surf Shop. And that was like what the it girls did back then. And I remember being so fucking excited, and I wasn't even paid, and they paid me.
You didn't care?
No, of course not. I would have done it like nothing at all. But I remember they gave me a pair of Stan socks as like, a little thank you. And I like cherished these Stan socks, and like, I don't know, it was just like such a cool experience. And like, I was like, even just so happy to be there. And it was super awkward, as any shoot is when you're like first in front of the camera. But I remember looking back on the photos and being like, oh, these aren't terrible. Like, these aren't like horrible. And so I posted them on my socials. And then when I went to college, I tried to pursue modeling a little bit more. A few different opportunities like fell in my lap. People just being like, hey, I know this girl, like she's pretty, she'll take photos. So That was kind of what
for
broke
socks.
me.
She'll do pictures for socks.
For socks.
She doesn't
for
need
food, for really anything. Wasn't paying the bills. Right. But so I pursued that and I started posting the photos. And back then I like how you kind of grew on Instagram was being reposted by different pages. So back then it was like all of like the college girl pages started reposting me, and like these different little outlets. So I started gaining a following that way. And then kind of how I realized that I could then take that following and monetize it, because I saw other girls getting like products sent to them, like bikinis and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. We all know I'll work for socks. I'll definitely work for bikinis. Mm-hmm. So I started reaching out to these brands and being like, hey, I'm a model. If you want, I'll include your bikinis in these photo shoots that I'm taking. And so that's kind of like what started everything. And then once I kind of had that, you know, in the bag, momentum, I was like, yeah, I was like, oh, I can even get paid for this. Like I can say, hey, you know, pay me and I will do a photo shoot with your bikinis and you can use it for all your socials. So that was kind of how that started working. And then that was kind of like when influencers had just kind of started becoming an actual thing. So I would say that like I was on like the very early end of influencing.
Definitely.
And so from there, I really kind of just wrote out influencing for a few years while I was in college. I also, of course, had full-time jobs at the time as well. Like influencing wasn't paying the bills. It was more just like a fun thing and a side hustle. And there was really no set path. So no one knew where the influencing world was going to go. Not like nonetheless knew that it was going to be the billion-dollar industry that it is today.
Well, and if anything, I mean, I was never an influencer, but owning the shoe store, I worked with a lot of influencers, and I feel like I read a lot of articles. And if anything, I remember thinking they were pushing hard that it was just a trend, and that this was never going to even, you know, grow into anything. It wasn't going to evolve into. It was going to just be dead. Like, embrace it while you can, because this is going nowhere. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that was really not a thing back then at all.
Yeah, and I remember so many people being like, oh, well, you know, it's fun while it lasts, but make sure that you're getting your degree, make sure that you have a job, because, you know, you're not going to be able to make a living off of this. Like, stop playing around on Instagram, posting bikini photos, like you're not going to go anywhere with it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I did have multiple marketing and PR jobs in college, internships. I also worked, so like Monday through Friday, I was working at my marketing job, and then Saturday and Sunday, I was working at Sephora. And I did that for a few years. And then I remember leaving Sephora because I was like, I'm losing out on modeling jobs and influencing jobs on the weekend. So I left Sephora, but I still had my Monday to Friday job. And then I started going part-time at the marketing job because I was like, I can't, you know, I'm missing out on these different music videos, on these influencer trips, like all of these cool things that are, you know, being presented to me. And then I remember I finally I like spoke to my marketing boss and I was like, hey, I love it here. And like, this is so scary for me, but I think that I need to like stop working here altogether. And I kind of like made sure that I would have the opportunity to go back if I needed. Cause you know,
smart girl. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause you really don't know. And, you know, there's always that like self-doubt. But yeah, I went full time with influencing about probably 3.5, 4 years ago now. And, have been working for myself ever since.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. So tell me about, let's start. So you had the agency before you had the podcast, right?
No, I've had the podcast for almost 3 years. Almost.
Yeah. And did that happen organically for you and Olivia as friends? You just thought, well, we might as well like talk and record it because we do it enough anyways.
Yeah. So, Olivia and I, previous to quitting my marketing job, we actually worked together for about 9 months at a corporate job. And so we kind of we had the same position. So we worked very closely, and we kind of learned in that position that we worked well together. Like we were like, oh, we can be around each other every single day. We had a really good workflow amongst each other. And we both quit that job and, you know, started doing more modeling, more influencing. And then we kind of realized that we just didn't have a ton of like purpose in modeling and influencing. Like it really wasn't filling our cup. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore my job. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But we realized that we had like more to offer as human beings than just, our physical and, you know, physical aspects and just
Well,
like the photo side of things.
and I feel like that goes for anything. Like, and I always tell people this, like, at any point in life, you have to stop and reevaluate and take a step back and say, okay, what's, like you said, what's really filling my cup, and what do I really love, but I could be seeking more of. And, like, I mean, life is too long, and it would be so boring if we didn't change it a bazillion times, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, I think it's always, like, healthy and refreshing to, even like you said, even if you love what you're doing, but there's like still like a tug that something's missing, to stop and say, okay, where could I make a change, and where could I try something new, and maybe it'll work and maybe it wouldn't. But for you guys, you luckily it worked for you guys.
Yeah, and we're huge, proponents of like you are the boss of your own life. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
pivot, you can adjust, you can change anything that you want to. Like we get so tied up in this idea that like we have to take this, traditional path to whatever it may be, climb the corporate ladder, but it's really just not true. And that's just something that's been sold to us. And so I brought this idea up to her, and podcasts weren't really a big thing back then at all. They had just started, picking up, but we didn't know anyone that had a podcast. And I was like, hey, I have this idea. I feel like we could do a podcast. I feel like we could do it really well because we have such a great friendship. And we had both already had followings at that time. So it took me about 6 months to convince her, but then we finally went for it. So we've had the podcast for almost 3 years. And then we launched the agency almost 2 years ago.
So at what realization were you like, okay, so now we're gonna be best friends, we're gonna do a podcast together, and now we're gonna open an agency? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, so the podcast, as I'm sure you've probably already figured out by now, podcasting, like having a podcast, is its own business. There's so much that goes into it. There, between, especially if you start to get into like sponsorships and brand deals, and if you have other, people that are involved in it, like we have a podcast assistant, we have an intern, and we have an editor. So there's a lot of moving parts. And during that process, in that first year of podcasting, it was there was such a huge learning curve. There were so many bumps, there were so many mistakes that were made, and that was when we really realized that we could like work together in any capacity. And then I feel like once we got that down, we knew that really whatever business that we wanted to launch down the line, we would most likely do together, just because there's power in numbers and we just work so well together that it would be silly not to. So I was doing, we still, of course, are doing our influencing side, on the business on the side. And I had been doing photography for businesses and, kind of pitching content creation. And I was using Olivia for a lot of like the modeling. So brands would send me their products. And instead of like me shooting it and posting it on my page, I would just shoot their products with my model friends and then give them the photos to use. And I would charge them, like these little package rates. And then I kind of realized, I was like, hey, we can like do this on a larger scale. Right. We can make this a marketing agency. I have a marketing background. I've been a social media manager for so many companies. I understand how to build a following. Olivia, the same. And so we started off as a content creation agency, and we were essentially we came up with like 3 packages and we're pitching them to brands. A lot of the brands that we were already working with, because we had these followings and had been working with brands for so long. And then from there, from being a content creation agency, we kind of started adding on these different services of like social media management, influencer campaigns, things of that nature.
This is what I love so much about you and Olivia. But so you guys just go with the flow, which we all say you guys are supposed to go with the flow and figure out life, and things will come at you as they come at you, and you just adjust and pivot, like we said earlier. But like, how do you, okay, I guess, do you have any advice for people? I mean, I feel like you just like, this is what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna stick a path and I'm gonna see what happens, and when things come flying at you, you just take them and you adjust and you reevaluate. And I mean, do you think there's anything that's kind of led you to that mindset? Is there any like realizations you've ever made that have helped you kind of stay on that path? Because I mean, that's just not normal for most people, just to continue to create businesses or to continue to be ahead of the curve. I mean, you were ahead of the influencer curve, you were ahead of the podcast curve. I mean, you have something in you that makes you jump on things before most people realize it. Is there anything you can attribute that to?
I would say that it's listening to, where you're being pulled, right? And life will pull you in these directions for a reason. You have intuition for a reason. You have these like little like whispers of ideas for a reason. And you just have to be in tune with them and be able to trust in yourself that you're like, you have to just be able to have the trust in yourself that you know that you'll go for it, and regardless of whether or not it works out or it fails or it succeeds, doesn't really matter. Then what matters is that you're taking that next step, that leap of faith, and that you're trusting in yourself that everything happens for a reason, and no matter if something succeeds or fails, it's in your highest path. You know what I mean?
I have totally made that shift lately. I feel like personally, it's like there's a lot of things that come at me, and I constantly say to myself, even when I don't want to say it, it happens for a reason. It happens for a reason. And it's so cheesy, but it's so true. I mean, it's like, because then you look back, like, I mean, prime example of this whole podcast, it's like you look back, the path of least expectance, where you didn't think you were going to be, right? If you had said, if you hadn't made that failure, you would never be succeeding here. But yeah.
Yeah. And it's so true. It really is. Because, I mean, and of course, it's easy to like look at other people's journeys of entrepreneurship and say, oh, wow, like it's crazy. You've made all these leaps and you trust in yourself, but there's like so much self-doubt there. There's so much second guessing yourself. There's so much imposter syndrome, and there's so many failures. Like we've made so many failures. We've made, bad investments. We've trusted the wrong people with our businesses. We've had
trust. That's a big one right there.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much behind the scenes that a lot of people don't even see. And that's kind of why we also have the podcast. Like we keep it extremely real on our podcast, and we tell everyone like what type of bullshit we're going through, so that hopefully people don't have to make the same mistakes.
Right. Or at least can relate. And they can be like, oh gosh, I'm not the only one who did that.
Yeah, at least I'm not alone.
Too. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so favorite client so far? Like not like name, but just like what's your favorite experience? Like what's your, because I feel like what you do, this creative, what is it? It's a creative digital agency. Like this is cool. You can reach, but you can also do all sorts of things. So what's your favorite project you've worked on?
I would say that my personal favorite project is this company called Muscle Tech. And they are a like supplement company. So they do like proteins, they do pre-workouts. It's like a very much like a gym company. And the reason that it's my favorite is because I started working with them on a personal level. So I do a lot of influencing for them. And it was actually like through a manager of mine who got me the deal. And then I was able to find the direct contact for the brand, pitch them to my agency, and now they have been our biggest client at our agency yet, like by far. They've booked our largest deals, deals that we're looking at like 30 TikToks a month, which is, just huge masses of content. And it really just resonates with me because I am in the gym so much, and it's such an incredible and easy client. Like they just really enjoy our work. They say 100%, we trust you. And that's just like the best feeling, because we've worked with so many clients that have such a small budget and then will nitpick every single freaking thing you do. And it's just like such a headache. And what we did was we were like, okay, when we realize that a client is going to be such a headache, we're not going to take them on, because honestly, we don't have to. We're not in a position where we need that client. Like, would it be nice? Absolutely. But it's not worth our mental health and our employees' mental health. And so we, kind of shifted our mindset. And what we did was we manifested this client who is our biggest paying client to this date, and is also one that fully trusts us. So that's my favorite client right now. And we're still currently working on projects with them.
And that is like, we need to ring that as loud as we can. Authenticity and finding relationships, whether it's personal, business. You're not everyone's cup of tea, and and that's okay. Like that is okay. Don't work with someone on either side of a business deal that doesn't feel real or authentic. And I'm not saying it has to be a perfect match, but if right off the bat, or if halfway through things aren't working out for you. I mean, I deal with this on like with my radio job all the time. It's like, I just started recently endorsing a gym, and people always say, oh my gosh, you really sound like you love that place. Like, good job. And I'm like, I really do love that place. I'm not, that authenticity is like, it has to be there. And and I could never make I could never act a certain way about a certain product if I didn't genuinely feel that way. And if you're seeking, like, no matter what side of the business deal you're on, I think if you're not seeking that authenticity, then, I mean, I know it's a buzzword, but it's so true, that trust. And you have to be able to, like, if you want it to succeed, like you said, for them to be your best client, it has to be real.
Yeah, and it's so true. Like, I physically, like, I lack whatever it is that would enable me to act excited about something that
100%.
Mm-hmm. Like, it would make me physically ill, because I don't know, like, I absolutely cannot fake it
so
in that
cringy.
aspect. And even, like, we had a client who was paying the bills. We were doing reels for them, and they were a great client, like a shoe wear client. They were really cute. It was, like, very aligned with our aesthetic. And after doing a few packages with them, we would, like, deliver the content, and they would only, like, harp on negative things. Like, we would follow their content briefs, like, from, point A to point B, like, fully down the line. Like, we would go step by step, ensure that they understood, everything that we were shooting, the locations, the models, make sure that they were happy with everything. And then we would go above and beyond for this client. We would deliver the content, and they would just only say negative things, like, oh, well, the shoe looks a little dirty here. We're like, you requested a mountain setting. There's only so much we can do to keep the shoe clean, right? And so we, after a few packages, ended up communicating, hey, we don't really feel appreciated. Although we understand that we're getting the job done, and they love the content, they're using the content, they're happy with it. We just didn't feel appreciated. And we communicated that, and we were like, unless something is going to change, we feel like it's best that we put this partnership on pause. And they were like, sorry that you never felt appreciated, but yeah, we're going to be ending this partnership because, whatever. And I was like, at least we don't have to be worried every time we deliver content that these people are going to just say something negative without appreciating how we're going, so far out of our way for them. So even little things like that, it doesn't have to be this huge blowout, like they don't, appreciate the content, or, they're a terrible client. They weren't a terrible client. It just wasn't resonating with us. And so we decided to let it go, and we've never felt better.
Well, and it's just like a real relationship, like, personally with someone. Like, you can't settle, right? So you can't settle for something just to bring you money. You can't settle for something just to have a boyfriend or girlfriend, or, you can't settle on those things, because it's not going to bring you the happiness that you want in life, or
and that we deserve, like, right? We deserve clients who appreciate how much we're going above and beyond.
That we deserve. Yes,
exactly. And if we're settling, we're not making space for those clients that we do deserve. You know what I mean? Like, if we're showing the universe essentially what we're accepting and what we're settling for, how can we ever, get up to that higher level of, client? You know what I mean?
Right. And if anything, it's just filling your day with negative stuff when you could be filling it with more positive stuff. It's just going to drag you down and not allow you to do your other parts of life better. Exactly. Okay, so I also wanted to say, so I've never had a business partner before, but I know a lot of people listening probably do, or maybe they're sitting in a position where they've been with a friend and they're like, oh my gosh, they've been throwing ideas back and forth, and they're like, I could totally do this. We could totally work together. One word of advice for people who want to work together. What is it?
I would say, one word is, like, the hardest thing, because
not one word, but one.
I could go on, like, a tangent. I would say understand each other's intentions, and to understand each other's intentions is to have full confidence that your business partner is always going to be looking out for your best interest and for the best interest of the business, because you guys are going to butt heads, and a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, don't go into business with your best friend, don't go into business with family. I believe it's like the opposite. As long as you guys have the understanding that you guys have this common goal, and that neither of you are, like, shitty people that are, like, trying to do anything sketchy. Like, because Olivia and I will obviously, we butt heads all the time, and what always kind of brings us back from the fucking edge is being like, we are both trying to accomplish the same thing here. We are both trying to communicate what we think is the better plan of action, whatever it may be. I could be like, oh, I think this location is better for a shoot. She's like, I think this location is better. What we're really looking for here is what location is best. And, you know, of course that's subjective, but, you know, there's ego can come into play so much when you're thinking like, oh, you know, what I know is best, or, you know, they're just trying to push their, you know, push their ideas on me, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, you're both just looking out for the better good of the business.
Right. You got to let your guard down and just be like, okay, here we go. This is what it is.
Exactly. Just like putting your guard down, stop being so defensive, stop thinking that you're always right. And honestly, also having the ability to take accountability for yourself and understand when it's time to apologize and when it's time to you know, stop acting like such a fucking dick. Because, you know, a lot of the time, like, you'll be acting a certain way and not realizing it. But the ability to say sorry and really take accountability for your actions and, you know, make a plan to say, I understand where I went wrong, and, you know, this is how we're going to avoid doing it again. Olivia and I literally have a safe word for when we start getting in like these really heated discussions,
yeah.
so that we can both put our guard down and humanize each other again.
Yeah, which is never a bad idea, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me this. I think it's really interesting that you model like here and there. Like, I don't think most people do that. Like, most people say I'm going to model and they're going to commit to it and they do this. But then like you just pop up on like Swim Week. This, like, I saw these pictures from when you were in Miami Swim Week, which is just like, how does that work? Like, is this just like a passion for you and you love it, and when you find opportunities you run for it? Or is it, I mean, how does that work? I just think that that's so wild. Most people like will like work their whole year to do like one fashion show, and you're able to just kind of navigate throughout different ones. I think that's so interesting. Explain.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know. Again, modeling wasn't really filling my cup, so I started to just deviate from that. And I realized that what most models make in an entire shoot day is what I can make off of one post or one story. And once you kind of have that mindset, it's like, well, I'm never going to go back to working a 12-hour day when I can spend, you know, an hour creating a post and make the same amount. So that was a main reason why I kind of moved from the space. And also, you're just not really appreciated a ton as a model. You're not respected as a model. And it's super unfortunate, because I know such stellar, like, brilliant models that have so much more to provide than just their looks. But I remember being on shoot days and never feeling like my voice was heard, and I would have like these creative ideas, and I would end up like directing a lot of the shoot, especially when it's for these small businesses, because, you know, you have one good idea. I'm like, hey, maybe we should try this idea, and then they're like, perfect, and then you end up like directing the entire thing, and it's an exhausting day. Or they don't even treat you like a human, and, you know, you voice something that you don't like maybe I don't like how, you know, a garment is fitting me, and it's not a clothing shoot, it's something else. So like, I should have the autonomy to change if I don't like something, and, you know, they basically tell you to suck it up. So it just isn't, you know, a career path that was really resonating with me. And so I just really naturally moved away from it. But, you know, if I have a friend hit me up, or if I have, you know, because like for Miami Swim Week, that was my friend Kenzie from KB Swim.
I know her.
And it was just like a given that I was going to walk in her show.
Right, of course. Yeah.
And so I had so much fun doing that, and it's so much fun to kind of like come out of retirement for a second. But it's just not something that really does it for me, and it's not really my main focus.
So go back to what you were saying about how you could do like one post and make, you know, what you made in a day of modeling. Yeah. So I know there's a lot of people out there, especially like we said, in this world that was supposed to just die off, and it hasn't, with, you know, influencing and all of that. So what's some advice you have for anyone who, whether it's a personal influencer or maybe they have a business or whatever it is, and they're using social media platforms, like, what's some advice you have, like places to start to see more success? I mean, just any advice you have. I mean, I feel like this is what you kind of do for a living, so give us some freebies. Don't give us too much, because we want them to come hire you, but
no. I mean, so we don't even like manage influencers at all. But as far as like tips, I would say definitely just like staying on the pulse of what's happening on social media. So make sure that you're on TikTok, make sure that you're following like these social media accounts. Like there's so much free and great info on TikTok about how to grow a following. We go over how to grow a following from literally, you know, nothing on my podcast. Like we go into that a lot with like these different social media managers. So we have like literally experts that come on the podcast. So really any podcast that's going over social media, I mean, there's so many great free resources. And then essentially, if I had to give, you know, like tips for, you know, like my personal tips, I would say find like what your niche is. You know, some people like the beachy girl aesthetic, some people like the fitness girl aesthetic. You know, whatever it may be, like whatever your vibe is, make sure that it's something that you enjoy creating around, and just start posting, start creating a community for yourself. Make sure that you're getting on your stories, and kind of like fake it till you make it. A lot of these people like really are scared to become an influencer because they're scared of what their hometowns will think of them. And as someone who left a small hometown to pursue that, there will be judgment made, and you know, people will be
people
talking
are going to judge you no matter what you do. Exactly. I mean, you can't let judgment hold you back. I mean, you're going to be judged. You could eat a piece of salad or a piece of, I don't know what my point is, but anyways, you're gonna get judged no matter what. You know, you can be doing something fabulous and you're still gonna get judged.
Yeah, and those people aren't gonna pay your bills. You know what I mean?
Or like, run your life.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just, you really have to get past that mindset and fake it till you make it. Just start pretending to be an influencer. Right. Like you're an influencer.
Confidence is key.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you said earlier, you don't really have, I mean, you do have to fake it till you make it, but with all the resources that are like free these days, you don't really have to fake that much. I mean, I didn't know how to start a podcast, but I went online and learned how to do it. You know, I mean, I'm not at a place where I can have a team yet, so I got to do it on myself. I'm a one-man show. So it's like, but again, like I went online and I was actually surprised, because I hadn't researched anything myself in a while, at how much you could learn simply from Googling something. I mean, it's there's no excuse to not learn. There is no excuse, people.
There really isn't. I mean, YouTube University is a real thing. TikTok University is as a whole new thing. You can literally look up how to become an influencer on TikTok, and there will be thousands of videos outlining exactly how to do that.
And like you said, go find the one that maybe fits your aesthetic most or your niche market the most, and dive into that.
Yeah, pull inspiration from those people and kind of recreate it in your own voice, and really just go from there. And it's going to be trial and error, and you're going to see what performs well and what doesn't perform well, and you know, start reaching out to brands and saying, hey, I would love to create content. There's so many companies that are working with micro influencers. Like our project manager for Mood, she was our personal assistant for a while before she went full-time at Mood. And we were like, Taylor, just reach out to the companies that you're reaching out to us for. And she got like a bunch of free product. And I don't think she even has 1,000 followers. She has like 900 followers, I think, and she doesn't have like, she doesn't really even have an aesthetic necessarily. And like, you know, Chi hair care, like the straighteners, and like, they sent her like a whole kit. I'm like, that's so fire. I would have loved that. You know what I mean?
I love that. I mean, maybe I should reach out and wonder if they're.
Yeah, I mean, listen, she's got.
I was gonna say no, and speaking on the other end of that, as a business owner, I love micro influencers. You know why? Because they're not consumer, but their audience is so dedicated to them that they post a shoe and I would get 50 orders for that shoe, and they maybe had 10,000 followers, but their 10,000 followers were so committed and so loyal that when they said jump, they went. And you know, sometimes when you see these, you know, hundreds of thousands of followers, it's not organic followers a lot of the time, which you know, but just speaking, you know, to whoever's listening. And so, I mean, don't let that number fool you, because a lot of times that 10,000 is going to get you a whole lot more than that 100,000.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, as someone who has 140,000 followers and I own an agency that works with influencers, I'm going to work with the smaller micro influencers, because my following isn't even as engaged as some of these people who have much lower following, simply because I've had my following since freaking Vietnam. You know what I mean? So a lot of these followers are just not engaged anymore. Whereas a lot of these new micro influencers, it's all brand new people that are engaging and on the apps and have recently followed this person for a reason. Whereas like a lot of my followers are like a lot older and like, have, they've just grown with me.
Grown with
Whereas,
you, yeah.
Whereas a lot of, these newer influencers are just going to have better engagement, better impressions, and a better community because, people are just so much more excited about them. Whereas me, I'm old news, been here for a minute.
Right.
So yeah, I
so
definitely
old. You're so strung out.
I mean that's how I feel on social media these days. I'm like,
right.
and that's why I have a business now. I'm like, I can't. I mean, I could do social media forever, but like, I don't want to.
Well, you shifted, I mean, you're still doing it. And I think that the reason you're succeeding at your business is because you're so smart and you took everything that you knew and you said, how can I reshape it and how can I make it a profitable business moving forward? Like I said, you still model, you still, you're a photographer, you do your social media, but you take it all and you hone it into a business. And then, you have your podcast, which is able to then promote the business. I mean, it's a beautiful, like, universe that you've created for yourself, which I feel like is really goals for everyone, to be able to work in harmony with your best friend and, do things that you love and be your own boss. And it is possible. I mean, people, I just don't think they don't believe that it's possible because it's so hard. And a lot of people probably weren't motivated like you were to just continue on this, down your path of least expectance, where you just continue to find things that you never resisted. You just went.
Yeah. And it, I saw this, I was listening to a podcast this morning and a quote said, let go or be dragged. And that really resonated with me because I would have just basically, had I not let go and just like trusted in the universe, I would have been dragged through this traditional corporate ladder bullshit. And I dropped out of FIU. I only did 3 years because there's
something about a dropout, man.
There's something about a dropout. And like my dad to this day still is like, when are you going back to school? I'm like, fucking never. Like, there is nothing that a degree could do for me at this point in my life. And I would have been, had I not let go of these like societal pressures and like my father's expectations and, this idea that I was going to be unsuccessful if I took this entrepreneurial route, I would have been dragged through it and I wouldn't be half the person that I am today because of it.
Right. And it's never too late to just to restart that, I mean, no one's ever going to tell you like you can't restart that. You can't. So maybe you are like sitting at a desk and you hate it and you're like, but I got to continue to do it because this is the path I chose, which is like such a crock of shit because it's not. You didn't choose that. I know, you chose what you chose. If you don't want to do it, don't do it again. Nobody chose it for you.
Exactly. And like you are like, people really get in this idea that like it's too late for them to do certain things. Like my mom just went back to school to become like an RN assistant and just got a position. Like my mom's like in her late 40s, you know what I mean? Like, and she was a social worker before in her life. And like, she's doing this entirely new different thing now. And that's totally fine. I was looking into flight schools the other day because I was like, what if I want to become a pilot? Because like that would be sick to do in this lifetime and I have the ability to do it. And it's like, so I'm like looking into like taking like discovery flights to see if that's something that I want to pursue, like we can pursue whatever we want at any time in our lives. Like there's literally nothing holding us back except for ourselves.
It's so true. And you never know when you're going to need that skill. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I've
learned. What if my pilot passes out and I need to fly the plane?
Did you see, this is so random, but we have to talk about it because I know you're going to love this, on the radio. I did my radio show this morning and we reported on this incident. Apparently, I don't know where, they were on a flight and they were going to Cabo. But so someone kept airdropping nudes to everyone on the plane and they had to like come on and make an announcement. The pilot was like, listen, either you stop airdropping nudes, whoever it is, or we're going to have to turn this plane around and we're all going to have to get off and no one's making it to Cabo and we're going to have authorities come on and take care of this. So stop dropping the air nudes or we're going home. Like I
did not hear about that.
You've got it. We just reported it this morning, but there's literally audio of the pilot yelling at the plane for dropping air nudes to people. And then he's like, if you don't stop, we're not going to Cabo. We're not going to Cabo. You can all get punished and go home.
Yeah, fuck that. I mean, that happened a few months ago. Like this old guy was like airdropping his nudes to like this girl next to him and she like made this whole fucking scene about it. People on planes are weird. I don't know why. I mean, stop acting up on planes.
You're gonna fly private only. You're gonna only fly private planes. I mean, you're gonna fly them is what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I only
But I mean, yeah, and that too, both ways. It really is so beautiful to like stop and think like, what else could I do in this life? I mean, I'm in my early 30s. Like, I think all the time, like, what could I do next? What could I do next? But then it's always like stop there. I'm like, what could I do next? And then I stop. Like, why do we stop ourselves? Why do we not understand that like we can continue to do more and more and more and more, right? I mean, I just think it's probably just a natural like instinct to, maybe pace ourselves, but
yeah, I mean, I would even love to like touch on your journey because again, when we met 6 years ago, you owned a shoe store, and I know that you sold that shoe store, and
I did.
we're doing the coffee shop thing for a bit. Obviously, you have your radio show, and now you've started the podcast. So, what kind of led you to starting the podcast?
Well, it's funny. It's like my life, and this is why I did this podcast. That I basically wanted to take what I've done in my life and tell people about it and share other people's journeys because it's the path of least expectance, right? So I grew up a professional tap dancer. I was a performer. That was all I ever wanted to do. I moved to New York City. I got accepted into I applied to one design school. It wasn't a dance school, but I was like, I'm going to go and make my parents happy. I'm going to apply to a school. There's not a chance I'm going to get in, right? But I was safe because I only applied to one. So I'm not going to get in it. And then I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to thrive as a dancer. Well, of course I got in, so I had to go. And it was Parsons School of Design in New York City, which is a phenomenal design school, right? So I'm like, well, whatever. I'll dance on the sides. I was part of a touring dance company, an off-Broadway company. I was like, I'll tour on the weekends. I'll go to school during the week. I'll make everybody happy. But I'm in New York, so I'm like gonna thrive, and I'm gonna get a job on Broadway, and then I'm gonna have to drop out of school because my parents would obviously let me leave school for that reason, right?
Yeah.
Well, I never did. I did all 4 years in school. I really loved it. I continued the dance journey. I ended up moving back to Wilmington kind of randomly. I came home after I graduated just to kind of be here for the summer. I mean, we live in paradise. It's the beach, right? So I ended up coming back here and, didn't know this, but my grandmother actually ended up getting really sick. My dad got really sick. They both passed away. If that had not happened, I would not have been around for the last couple of years, which was, a whole nother thing. So that happened really organically, and then ended up meeting my now husband, and we were going to go back to New York. And then we had that discussion a bunch, and then we decided to stay here. But when I stayed in Wilmington, it was like, well, so I'm a tap dancer in Wilmington, not a thing. I have a really great design degree in Wilmington, not a thing. So, but yet we wanted to stay here, and I don't even know why we wanted to stay here, but we did. And so, and my husband's a dropout, an art history dropout, who's like a phenomenal entrepreneur, right? And so we're in the same like headspace. And we're like, well, then let's just create the life we want to live. Let's just create it. And we were young enough to be like, let's just do it. Let's just stay here and create the life that we want here, right? Yeah. So, and here's the other thing that's beautiful that I feel like a lot of people don't ever think about is, people move to towns like Wilmington and they're like, oh, there's just so much that it's missing. And so they move away. Well, then how come we don't stay here and start to build what's missing? Somebody has to do it. Why don't you be on the forefront of it, right?
Exactly.
And that's really cool. So we kind of had that mindset. We're like, well, let's start to kind of be some change. I mean, not that we're going to change it, but let's kind of bring some new ideas to Wilmington. So I did the shoe store, and then he did the coffee shop. And when I got I was advertising for the shoe store on a radio station. I got offered this position as a co-host, which was so far left field. But because of all my years of dancing and my performing, I was able to kind of get out there and just do it, right? I didn't care. I don't care what people think of me, and I could get on a mic and perform. So I did that. And that was really fun, and it provided an outlet that I was missing. And then life just got busy. I mean, my husband has done a million other ventures, and I wanted a second child, so motherhood was here for me. And motherhood's only here for a little bit, so I decided it was important for me right now, which was really hard. I mean, that was probably the hardest decision yet, because I loved my shoe store and it was thriving 5 years in, and we were doing big things. But you have to make space for what you want, and at that moment it had to happen. So I was lucky enough to sell it, and then had my second child, and now I'm doing the radio, and I love the radio so much, but I just kind of wanted to do something that was more, I mean, that's just fun stuff. This is more deep stuff, right? So I like to call it my the 10 things I hate, not the 10, the how to lose a guy in 10 days moment, right? So she's like, I just want to write about important things. Like, I just want to talk more about important things, right? So, and just do something different. So anyways, here I am doing a podcast and opening a new business and just doing it all. So yeah.
What's the new business?
So we're opening a new, we're trying to do something new again in Wilmington. It's one of those new upscale convenience stores. So the like more health food related, healthier for you, quick grab and go option on Wrightsville Beach.
Nice.
So something that's kind of needed, and we've got a partner, Mason Barnes, who's like a big wave surfer. He's our partner, so he was local to Wilmington, and he
Mason
wanted to
Barnes, like I'm
big
pretty
wave
sure I went
surfer.
pretty sure I went to high school with him.
Probably. Did you go to Friends? No. Where did he go to high school?
I went to Topsail.
No, he didn't go to Topsail.
Oh, I went to high school with another Mason Barnes.
Oh, really? Well, he's
yeah.
your age.
I was like, is it the same one?
I don't know. You probably know him. You've definitely, and he's from here, and he's about your age. I don't think he went to Topsail. I don't know. But anyways, so he's a really cool aspect to add in, and so yeah, this is the first time we've ever done something with a partner, so that's interesting. But I mean, it's definitely it's working great. Yeah. So.
And what's your ETA on that?
Oh, well, December will be 3 years that we've been working on the project because of, not because of us, because of just the town and
COVID delays and stuff?
Yeah, the town, we kind of opened a can of worms with Wrightsville Beach on zoning. Our building was really old, so it was just a crazy experience. Yeah. It's really boring. Nobody wants to hear about it, but it's nothing been in our control, been all out of our control. But we're hopefully getting our last paperwork back from FEMA that FEMA's had to get involved because it's a flood zone, and anyways, hopefully it'll be happening in the spring. But we keep saying that, and it doesn't happen. Yeah. So it is. Yeah. Okay, so what about for you? You're really thriving where you are, and I don't see, any need to change or pivot anytime soon, but do you have any other ideas? I mean, I know you said pilot school, but like, are you currently pursuing anything else?
Not really. So in the last few months, I got an apartment in LA and I set it up to be an Airbnb. So I got it and basically furnished it from the foundation, ground zero. And I'm renting it. So what I'm doing is called rental arbitrage, which is where you get essentially, you get the owner to agree and understand that you're going to be Airbnb-ing it. And so I got the owner to agree to it and set it up.
And that was a thing.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't, which I learned about this from TikTok. And so I did my due diligence. I did a lot of research on Airbnbs in the area and whatnot, and I got it completely set up. And I actually stayed over there for quite a few weeks, while I was doing everything, and it's so beautiful. I'm so obsessed with it. And as I went to finally get the Airbnb listing, turns out a zoning law, I cannot list it on Airbnb because the age of the building. Mm-hmm. It was just something so random that I couldn't have ever anticipated because I've never done this. And even with all the research I did, it just wasn't something that I came across because I didn't know to look for it.
Right.
So that's something that I'm currently dealing with, and it's something that I really loved and I really enjoyed. And again, it's just one of those losses that not losses, or not even necessarily a failure, because I don't really look at anything as failure. And something that we say often on the podcast is there's no losses, only lessons. Mm-hmm. And so that is something that I'm currently dealing with, but it did show me how much I loved that entire process. And now I know how to set up an Airbnb.
So what happens? You have to can you list it elsewhere? Can you do it just?
Yeah, so I'm currently looking into potentially subleasing it, just having someone live there in the furnished apartment, which I think is pretty possible. People are traveling to LA.
Oh, right.
Constantly. But if not, then basically I'll try to break the lease and bring everything back with me. Or I can look to find another apartment there that the zoning laws will allow me to list it, and kind of start over, bring everything into that apartment. There's a lot of options, and I literally kind of just figured this out. So I'm in solution mode. But again, that is something that I do foresee in my near future, is setting up an actual Airbnb. And I really do love everything that's experiential, and I love everything that's in the little details. And I even owned a vintage furniture and home decor store for about a year, which I absolutely adore it. So I really enjoy interior design and all those aspects. So I think that that's something that I will be doing in the next year or so.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that about interior design, that you did that.
Yeah, I did. And I love it. Like I love everything like vintage. Like I love finding unique pieces, one of a kind pieces. Like it's like my passion, honestly.
So you keep it moving, keep it changing. I wonder how you're
Yeah.
going to connect those two passions between like
Yeah.
the.
Well, I mean, the Airbnb was that idea, you know. I was like, well,
Right.
I'm a business person, and it's also listed on Peerspace, which is a like an app that you can like rent photo locations on. And so I've had some bookings through that, which has been great because it's kind of like linking my, passion for interior decor and interior design with photography, and people are like shooting in the space, and it's really beautiful to see that. And I wish I could keep the space, but at no point will it like not be illegal to Airbnb it. So
Right.
it doesn't look like I'll be staying in it, but everything happens for a reason.
And that's cool too. Were you doing it to have a space in LA to be able to rent if you wanted, or to live in if you wanted to be out there? Was that the initial?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to split my time about 70-30. So 70 in South Florida, 30 in LA. And that's what I was doing, while I was getting it set up. And I had, such a good system. I have a great assistant out there who has been so killer. And she was going to help me manage the Airbnb and everything. And again, like the apartment is like stunning. It's this loft with like dark hardwood floors. And it's just like, it has this like beautiful patio terrace that I set up
Ooh.
like lounge chairs on, and just like this. It's just so stunning. And if you guys want to see it, you can see it on my Instagram. I have a highlight.
Yeah, if you want to rent it, if you're going to LA
Well, yeah,
anytime
if you want to
soon.
rent it, and also if you just want to like see it. But yeah, I have a highlight on my page dedicated to it, kind of like showing start to finish. And it sucks because I poured so much of like my heart and time into it, and like literally blood, sweat, tears, and
Mm-hmm.
not to mention money. Obviously, it took a really large investment to do that. But again, it is what it is, and I'm confident that it'll work itself out.
Yeah, lesson learned, right? I mean, you learned so much that it's like it's never, like you said, it's never a failure.
Yeah, never.
Like the Spanx, Sarah Blakely. I love. Do you ever listen to her talk about how her dad used to make them sit down at the table every night and talk about how they failed?
Yeah,
I love that. I love that.
yeah,
My kids are a little too young to appreciate that. I mean, my oldest is only 6, so I can't quite do that with them yet. But I think that that's I love that concept of like talking about how you failed every day, and really how you learned lessons.
yeah. And I think really what entrepreneurship is about is it is about the failures. Like you're gonna fail infinitely more times than you succeed. And I also see failure and succeeding as these like made up concepts,
Mm-hmm.
because there is no succeeding. There's simply a journey. And the journey is what matters. And
Mm-hmm.
there's no failure. There's only the journey. Like there's literally only ups and downs, and success isn't linear. So we have to really take it all in stride.
Yeah, and I think for anyone listening who's like, that's baloney, like that's so stupid. It's not. And if you change your mindset and you start seeing life in that lens, I guarantee
Yeah.
you'll get a lot more out of life than you're getting right now. Because I have people all the time who laugh at me and they're like, "No, success is money," and I'm like, "Okay." You can continue to live that attitude, or success is this, success is that. You cannot put anything on success. Like success is not does not equal any finite thing. Success is what
Yeah.
you want it to be, and it's going to
But you can
change, and
find
it's
it
going to
out.
be different things in different situations. And until you can totally understand that, I really don't believe you're going to live life to the fullest. And maybe
Yeah.
that's just me, and I can, what, call me cheesy all you want. I don't care. I'll live my happy cheesy little life.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that if we were to define success as anything, it would be happiness. And it's
Happiness.
being able to find happiness even when times are tough. You know what I mean? I feel like that's really what's defining, is being able to have a positive mindset and understand that things are only temporary, even when you're in the thick of it. Because,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I had to, you know, kind of divulge where I'm at right now, I'm definitely in the thick of it. Like, been going through it. Someone
Mm-hmm.
like hit my fucking car yesterday, hit and run. Like, just,
I
it's
was walking through that with your stories yesterday, and I like literally got up this morning, like, oh my God, I got to see how it ended.
yeah. So, like it's just one of those things that, when it rains, it pours, and I'm in
Mm-hmm.
that. But I also am fully confident that, and another thing that I really carry with me during these times is understanding that I'm being put through all of this for a reason. And there's going to be so much greatness on the other side of this for me. Because after any dip, there's always a high, for me at least.
Right. We just don't know how low the dip is going to be, but that's okay because it's always going to come back out. But and like, what do they say? It's like the only constant in life is change. So I like looking at that from both ends, because it's like sometimes you're on a really good path and you know it's going to change, so you have to be prepared. Or maybe you're in a really bad spot, and listen, things are going to change. Like, the only constant is change. So take what you can get out of that experience. Learn what you can learn. Always be on the lookout for new things, you know, like adjust accordingly to whatever change is going to happen. But like, know that change is coming. So it could be good and it can be bad, you know, but always know that life's going to change.
Yeah. And all that matters is how you respond to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love the ooey gooey stuff. I really do.
Same. Same.
I know, right? I could go on a whole nother whirlwind of that. But so, I mean, anything else you wanted to touch on today? I feel like you have so many different things. I don't want to leave anything out.
I feel like we've covered all of the
bases. We've gone from stance socks to flying planes. I mean, we've covered
we've covered all of it.
Well, that was so fun going down that little path with you today. I love hearing just how you're really making the most of life. I mean, it's just so refreshing to see someone as young as you. I mean, not that you're like much younger than me, but just saying someone who's, you know, so young in life, just like I said earlier, taking reins into your own hands, like taking control, but like letting your life happen, I think is really refreshing to watch, especially a woman, you know, like. It's getting to a point where we don't have to say that anymore, you know, which luckily a lot of people, you know, they're like, well, of course she's a woman, she can do it. But, you know, it's really refreshing that we've made such a change in women in business that now it's totally acceptable.
Yeah. And then I appreciate that. Like, I needed this reminder for myself. Like I said, I've been going through it. So this conversation really helped put things in perspective for me.
You're welcome. So I brought you Olivia. I brought you like that realization that y'all were going to like make things. And I brought you this, you know, important change in your life today. So yeah,
incredible. I'm here anytime. More conversations.
I'd love to. Okay, so I'm going to link everyone up to everything. I'll link them up to you personally. I'll link them up to your business and the podcast, because if you are a podcast person, you're going to love. You guys do so much. Like, you span across. Although it is like, you know, a no BS guide to entrepreneurship, I feel like you guys cover so many bases, which is hard to find in a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, we really try to keep it just like very real. And, you know, we're not going to sit there and be like, these are the 10 steps to success, you know?
Yeah.
That's just not how it works. And that's not our journey. But we try to keep it real. And again, just kind of, you know, give you guys the insight that helps us on our day-to-day journeys.
It's awesome. So I'm going to link everyone up. And thank you so much. Good luck with the Airbnb. I hope that obviously it's not going to happen, but, and good luck with getting out of the thick of it, because you're going to do it. We all do.
Appreciate you. We all do. And it was such a great conversation, and I can't wait to listen to this back.
Yes. Have a good one. Bye, girl.